Today, we're going to find out how far the Kia EV6 GT with a whopping 585 horsepower and 21-inch wheels can go on a full charger battery now in winter. Will the high-performance version of the EV6 have a huge, if any, penalty over the much more mundane, long-range all-wheel drive version? And how will the GT perform compared to the competition? All of those questions are going to be answered within the next 9 minutes. We're headed north on the E6 motorway, now crossing the Minnesund Bridge over the Minnesund Lake. And the weather is, well, a little bit of snow in the air, but nothing that is, sticking to the ground. And the roads are like dry or damp-ish, and the outside temperature is around 4 degrees Celsius. Maybe it's going to get a little bit colder once we get a little bit north from this point, close to where we're going to turn around in the area of Hamad or Moelv to be specific. Usually it's a little bit colder inland. We're not too far away from Oslo, so we're still like kind of coastally, but we're going to head about an hour inland, and usually it gets a little bit colder when it is winter like now. So a little traffic, not a lot of traffic, which is nice, and our average consumption thus far 25.8 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers, which is pretty high. Not low, but again, we just started a trip, and usually the first section of this test we are climbing a little bit in elevation, so I'm suspecting that will drop once we get to our turnaround point. Other than that, the EV6 GT is a decently quiet car to drive because this is on bigger 21-inch wheels, and these aren't aero wheels. I think it's a little bit more noisy than if this car was on 19-inch aero wheels, but this being the GT, it comes with these wheels as standard. And also, these seats are fairly comfortable, but they're not electrically adjustable, and there's also no lumbar support that I can find, which is a little bit disappointing. So yeah, road now starting to dry up, and I'm gonna head northward for about an hour before I turn around, and then I'll talk to you and give you guys an update. An hour later, and we're now here at our turnaround point here in Moelv, and temperatures pretty much the same, -6 degrees Celsius. It was -4 when I did my last update, so not too bad, not too cold, which is pretty nice. So average consumption is now down to 25.3 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers. So a little bit lower than what it was earlier, but I took a look at the wind map, and we should have a headwind of about 1 meter to 2 per second. And that means, if that is correct, which it usually is, but sometimes it's not correct. But what that means is that probably the consumption is going to drop even lower once we get back to our starting point, back close to the airport right outside of Oslo. Also, conditions pretty much dry, a little bit of damp roads, but it is not too bad, even though it is a little bit cold. So I'm going to do an entry here on the southbound section of the E6 motorway, and I'll talk to you guys again in about an hour when we get back to where we started. Another hour passed, and we are here at our start point where we're going to end today's video and this range test. And the trip's been pretty fine, uneventful. I've just been listening to a podcast and just chilling. So what we're going to do, there are 2 chargers here. There's a row of 8 Camp Power chargers right over here next to the Esso station. But we're going to go to the Alpitronic hyperchargers over here because these peak at 225 kilowatts and all are vacant. So that's pretty nice. So we're down to 26% state of charge. So the big question is, what speed are we going to get now? Because we have not been preconditioning. And also average consumption now 25.6 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers, which is pretty much what we had halfway. So that is interesting. So the charger we're going to connect to here now is 225 kilowatts, and we have not preconditioned the battery because that's not what we do in this test. Even though this car does have preconditioning via the navigation system, we're not doing that in this test. We do that in my long trip test. Why we don't do that in this test? Well, that is to do a different type of test than what we do in the long trip test, because we want to test out what speed we get after just driving on the road for a few hours, and as I said, not preconditioning. So what we're going to do now is that while we're waiting for this to charge up, I just want to give a huge thanks to today's video sponsor, which is Recharge, the largest charge point operator in the Nordics with more than 4,000 charging points across Norway, Sweden, and Finland. And if you want to support the channel, go to the link in the description box down below. There will be a link there. Click on the map and find out where your closest recharge charger is. So we are now connected, 26% state of charge. And since we have not been preconditioning, the big question is, what speed are we going to get? So before I did this test, I did navigate to this charger, I did precondition, and I charged the battery up to like 95% state of charge. And at this percentage, we were getting a lot higher. I think we were getting around 200 kilowatts at around 27%. But since we've just been driving the car and it has been cold outside, the battery has been cooling down, and this is what we're getting, is this speed here. So we're gonna give it a few minutes now, see if the speed picks up. But to be honest, I don't think so, because I think the battery has cooled down so much that we're not gonna get more speed than this. Before we end today's video, let's take a look at the battery pack size, the consumption, and then calculate theoretical range. So this car has a usable battery capacity of 74 kilowatt hours. We take that number, divided by the consumption, and then subtract 3% in heat loss. We get a theoretical range under these winter conditions of 280 kilometers. And on the surface, that isn't great. It's not the best we've gotten out of an electric car in this class, and it's a little bit worse than what we got with the long-range all-wheel drive version about 2 years ago. So not great, but if we look at the WLTP rated range and compare what we got today to that, is actually not bad. 66% in winter is actually pretty good compared to a lot of other cars, which will get like maybe 55 or even down to 50%. So relative to other electric cars and the WLTP rated range, it is not too bad. But that doesn't hide the fact that this isn't the most efficient electric car when it comes to winter driving. Would it be better with smaller wheels? Absolutely. Would it be better with a different powertrain? Absolutely. But considering what you're getting here for this price, I don't think it is too bad at all. There is a compromise, but again, there's also a compromise in the price you're paying. You're not paying like 120,000 euros for this performance, and it does feel a little bit like a special car, this Kia EV6 GT. So before we went into this outro here, I wanted us to take a look at the charging speed again, and at 35% we're only getting 80 kilowatts. So preconditioning with this battery before you charge is vital, because when I preconditioned, I didn't get too much speed down low, but after I was connected for a while, I actually got 220 kilowatts at around this percentage, at around 35%, which is actually pretty good. But preconditioning in this car can be a little bit sensitive, and once the battery drops down below 20%, it actually stops preconditioning altogether, which I think is not the right way to do it. So guys, I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, please drop me a thumbs up down below, and for more car content, as always, please subscribe. See you guys later, and goodbye.